Welcome to A Lunch with Biggie, a podcast about small business and creatives sharing their stories and inspiring you. My guest today started a business because of his wisdom teeth. He came up with an dang hummus of an idea and took a dip with the sharks in the Shark Tank and landed a few. He grew his brand to over 50 states and over 10,000 stores. Let's find out and let's talk a little bit more with, and please welcome CPG entrepreneur, founder, and investor, Jesse Wolfe. What's going on, man?
What's up, brother? Thanks for having me, man.
Thank you, man. I've been wanting to have you for a while because I love your story. I love what you kind of what you're doing and what you're creating. So I definitely appreciate you taking the time to have lunch with me today.
Yeah, no, super excited. You know, I saw a lot of podcasts pop up right over the course of COVID, and I would say probably 97% of them didn't make it, including my own. For whatever reasons. But when you started yours, I was like, this is good. This is going to be something. And you're here and you're thriving, man. I mean, this is a great podcast.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you very much. It's been a year. And little by little, I'm kind of learning and growing, kind of how any small little business does. So first question, obviously, always, what's your go-to lunch sandwich?
Oh my gosh. That is, well, Biggie, I'm a foodie, so that's a tough one. I would have to say I got two that immediately popped to my mind. One's very Ohio-ish, which is where I'm from.
Okay.
And that's the old OG classic fried bologna and cheese sandwich.
Nice.
It's got to be white Wonder Bread. It's got to be Oscar Mayer bologna, in my opinion. It's got to be fried extra crispy.
Okay.
And it's got to be Hellman's mayo, right? With some American craft single.
It's funny. We just had this whole conversation with my wife, and I talked about that, and she brought it up. But I was like, wow. I'm like, you lived in high class, because she was like, deli cheese. And I was like, deli cheese?
Deli, no.
I was like, no. I was like, no deli cheese. I'm like, it's got to be that synthetic melty, that melty goodness.
Yeah.
I was like, that's the good stuff. Yeah. I'm like, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. And my number two, that I think would fight for that is, man, just the peanut butter and jelly.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a fiend. I eat peanut butter and jelly. It's funny, before we start podcast, I'm eating peanut butter.
Yeah.
I love peanut butter, man. So PB&J is just slap.
Creamy versus crunchy?
Creamy all day long.
And the other big one is peanut butter on both sides of the bread, or only one side of the bread?
Peanut butter both sides.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Good.
It helps hold in, because then you can put more jelly.
Yes.
Okay, it holds more jelly.
Yes.
Shout out to the lunch ladies back in elementary school who put copious amounts of jelly on there and got me hooked on that. I would purposely forget to sign up for lunch. Like in first grade, I was not a very bright little kid, I guess, because I could have just ordered cold lunch.
Yeah.
But if you didn't sign up for lunch, you automatically got cold lunch. So my teacher was always like, why don't you sign up for lunch? And it was because I wanted the PB&Js, man. They slapped. They were so thick.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. So good. So good. Okay, so let's unpack a little bit of the intro. So so for folks that don't know Jesse, I was introduced to Jesse, ironically, just like everyone else that didn't maybe know him. I saw him on TV and I read things about him because he had a small business called dang Hummus. So let's first kind of unpack that at first. So based on, and so that way you're not kind of fully retelling the story. And what I mentioned in the intro, you had a wisdom teeth got pulled, basically couldn't eat anything, trying to figure out soft things to eat that were good for you and filling, decided to do hummus, but then were kind of bored with the hummus flavor. So you started kind of playing around with it, and it just kind of blew up. So tell me a little bit about how you went, because once that happened and you had the moment, like, hey, this is great, my friends love this, you then went the route of farmer's market, right?
Yeah.
And then from there, at the same time, were you still at UCF at school, or not at school anymore?
Yeah, no, I was right in the middle of my college career, if you will, and working a full-time actual career. It was kind of a hot mess at the time. So the last thing I really had time for was a business venture, but I did it.
And what was interesting was at what point did you just say, like, how did that I'm kind of curious on some of these things. One is like the step where you're like, hey, I want to do farmers markets because I think this may work. And obviously the nice thing about farmers market is you can still have a full-time job and do it on the weekends and type of thing like that. At what point did you go, I can probably do this full-time?
Oh, that's a great story. I don't know if I've ever really told publicly, to be honest with you. So From the moment I had the Odang idea, there like a whole fall, spring semester had gone by where I wrote the business plan for a class. That's how really I was like, oh my God, this is like a real business potential here. And by the time that class had ended, I was in a business plan competition at UCF because I already had the business plan wrote, and it was my third attempt at this business plan competition where I didn't even make it in before the 2 years with different business ideas. I almost didn't do it this third one because I was so upset about the 2 previous years. I was like, screw it, I'm not doing it.
Out of curiosity, what were the other 2 business concepts?
So the one before it was called Bumper Love.
Okay.
And that was back when Florida used to have a real love bug problem. I caught wind. My buddy just graduated college and was working for Hertz. And Hertz was having a real problem with love bugs. Just destroying basically cars and cars' paints. So like long story short, when you buy a new car, they come with like this plastic wrap on the bumpers and stuff. So I was like, well, why don't we just put the plastic wrap back on the cars during love bug season? So, dude, craziest little story. I figured it all out. I became a distributor over the state of Florida for that product. And I was working with Hertz, and you're talking, I was like 22 or 23 at the time. Hertz was on board. It was $1.8 million for 3 weeks of work twice a year. So it was a $4 million business. But we had to wrap 6,000 cars. It was crazy. It was crazy money. And I was like, oh my God, this is it. I'm going to do it. Like we got one, and the Hertz was all about it.
Yeah.
But we couldn't get it below I was like $16 a car, and they needed to be like $9 a car to make it like efficient. And then the other hurdle was they wanted it to where you couldn't see it at all. And I'm like, with the time, we couldn't make it work. So I pitched that, which I really thought was going to get in, and because the year before, the year before was one called Go Box Marketing, which was we were going to basically give pizza shops and to go takeout places free to go in pizza boxes in exchange, like Pepsi, it would be a Pepsi pizza box, and
so you'd be selling almost advertising.
Yeah.
Which is smart.
Yeah, it was smart. And there's been companies that have tried it. It's just never like caught for whatever reason. So those are 2, I thought, decent ideas.
Yeah.
The second year I literally had Hertz ready to cut us a check and we couldn't quite figure it out. And UCF turned us away. And then the third year I got this crazy hummus idea, and I was like, I'm not going to do it. And then one of my professors was basically forced me to do it, to turn it in the night it was due. And I got in, so from there was like that 4 months where I was like, no, I'm not going to do this. It's just an idea. It was a good idea at first, not going to do it. Got in, ended up taking third, which broke my heart because I thought for sure I'd won this thing. I really needed the capital. It was like 15 grand plus all these like extra, great services you got for free. I got 4. So then I kind of just took the summer off. I was like, nah, screw this. It's, nobody obviously likes the idea. I got third. So it literally started in January of 2013 was the original idea. I didn't launch it until really April of 2014. It took over a year and a half before I massaged things out, kind of, fell, got back up, fell, got back up. And farmers markets, as that year and a half kind of went by, which, looking back on it, I regret that kind of failure point, but it taught me so much about staying consistent. You're going to fail. Like that was such a huge building block for my career, and I didn't realize it because now I do the same thing, just much faster. Yeah. Right. Like it's okay to fail.
So you fail faster.
Fail faster.
But you're also fail forward.
Fail forward. Right?
Gotcha.
Bingo. Yeah. And then, it was one of those things where I was winning all these, going to these business plan competitions. I was getting all these people's attention with it and getting great feedback. And I was like, well, it's one thing to get feedback and give away hummus for free, but it's another thing for someone to open their wallet and give you $5. So I was like, where can I do that? And I'm cold calling. This is 2014, so selling food online really wasn't a big thing at the time. So I'm cold calling small grocery stores around here. Publix, I'm trying to cold call Publix. They're not having it at all. Yeah. And I was like, okay, well, where can I go to get someone to pay me money? And I was mulling over this question in my head for weeks. And I just ended up at a farmer's market, the Lake Eola one on a Sunday with some friends. And I just kind of hit me like a brick. And I was like, oh, here. You could sell here, do it. Yeah. So I immediately went up to the market manager and I was like, hey, I have a hummus company. I'd love to sell here, so like, where do I sign up? And she just kind of laughs at me and she goes, you and about 500 other people. And I was like, okay, yeah, where do I sign up? She's like, no, there's a 2-year waiting list. I'm like, what? I was like, I'll sit next to the soap lady. And she's like, no, that soap lady makes $300,000 a year. And I was like, what? I was like, what is going on, So that was my journey into how, I figured out to go into farmers markets. I was like, oh, this is the ticket right here.
Yeah. And so did you start doing different farmers market, or did you finally get into Lake Eola, or were you doing different ones?
We got rejected by every farmers market in the state of Florida. No kidding. I mean, I tried them all. And I finally got into one. It was in the Dr. Phillips YMCA on Thursday nights. They were like, yeah, we had 9 vendors. It was small. And I was sick. And I was on a Tuesday, they told me, yes, you're good for this weekend. And I literally was getting ready to start making hummus on Friday. And I get a call and she's like, hey, market's closed. It's done. No more. And I was like, again, it was another moment where I wanted to quit. I was like, my God, nobody wants me in these markets, because there'd be some challenge. There was a Greek food truck that had a hummus appetizer. And I'm like, we sell a completely different product. I get it, but they're slinging gyros and stuff and, shish kebabs and that type of thing. We're doing take-home hummus, whatever. So it was called Good Neighbors. It was in Oviedo. I don't know if you remember it or not. It was actually on a farm, which was pretty cool. I just caught wind it was just opening and it was going to be a big deal. So I raced over there and I was trying to email the lady on the way and she's like, yeah, come over, I'm there. I'm like, okay. So I get out of my car and I'm like, hey, I see it's on a farm. The farm's gated off. And I'm yelling at her across the field. I'm like, hey, I'm the hummus guy. And she goes, you're a homeless guy? And I go, hummus. She goes, do you need food? And I'm like, what? I mean, I'm hungry, but no, I'm not homeless. I have a car. I drove here, And it was funny. That was my first market. And we kicked the doors in on that market in 2 weeks. I mean, we just did everything you weren't supposed to do at a farmer's market. We made a lot of noise. We made our booth super colorful. We had dog bowls full of treats and water for the dogs. We had stamps for the kids. Anything we could do to get you to stop and at least hang out for a second. Yeah. It always made the booth look really busy. Mm-hmm. And by week 2, we had a line so big they had to relocate our tent for the 3rd week because we were blocking other vendors. And I was like, this is it, right? So I went back to Lake Eola that 3rd week, and I packed 30 tubs of hummus in a cooler, a soft-sided cooler. And I saw that market manager. Now, remember, this is 6 months later. Yeah. And I said, hey, is there still that waiting list? And she goes, yeah. And I said, listen, I got into Good Neighbors. We're doing well. Here's my cooler. Just eat this hummus. I gave you a little bit of hummus. Here's some pita chips. She, share it. Well, I purposely gave her so much that she couldn't eat it all. So she gave it to everybody.
So she had to share.
Yeah. And then literally that was on Sunday. Monday morning, I had an email saying, welcome to the Lake Eola Farmers Market. So, and that's how we kind of, bamboozled our way in.
I like it. Guerrilla marketing.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. So then this is happening and it's building up. So how long did you do the farmers markets for before you decided you're going to do Shark Tank and all of that?
Not long enough.
I was going to say.
Not long enough.
I feel like it was only I'm curious to see what the number is because I have a number in my head of what I think it is.
We launched in farmers markets spring, March, April. It was actually April 24th, I think is the exact date, of 2014. We filmed for Shark Tank June 10th of 2015.
My goodness.
So, and that's filming. So we were already auditioning for Shark Tank January of 2015. So 7 months.
7 months in.
Yeah. I mean, it was crazy. And again, the only reason I went was because our fans that were coming to this farmer's market and our friends were like, dude, you guys should be on Shark Tank. And I was like, yeah, it'd be great. We caught wind the night before that they were down in Miami. I knew nothing about it. My friend told me. And she was like, oh, you should go. And I'm like, dude, we sling hummus at a farmer's market. We are not ready for Shark Tank. And I was like, you should go. She had a good idea. Okay. And she's like, well, let's both go, basically. And then on the way down there, she goes, just kidding. I'm not pitching, but you are. And I was like, oh, man, what the heck, But I was like, screw it. We'll just, we'll wear the bracelet and put it on social media.
Heck yeah.
And we somehow got through. I still, to this day, I'm like, whoa.
Well, I mean, it does help the fact that you've pitched before. So you did some pitching. So that definitely helps. Yeah. It's definitely an interesting concept or definitely a different world to go through it.
Yeah.
For sure. And we'll talk a little more about Shark Tank. I was kind of curious. Well, actually, no, we'll talk Shark Tank and then we'll talk about the next step because obviously as you grow, things change for how you produce your product. So, And that's actually a good transition on the fact that how I actually met you, because I obviously did see you on TV. Jesse and I went to the same university, UCF. And ironically, Jesse and I kind of look alike. Like, we're both big guys with beards.
Beards, yeah.
Obviously
hair.
in dark hair. Yeah. So, and the funny part is I actually got to meet Jesse. We knew each other on social media. We never met in real life. And I finally got to meet him because of another podcast that we both enjoy and love called Tom and Dan, A Mediocre Time. And they did their version of Shark Tank. And so I went in to talk about Deli Fresh Threads. And so he knew who I was. Jesse already knew who I was. But it was my way of being able to pitch, and it was really just a way to kind of advertise your company. It wasn't like anyone was going to buy or pitch or give me any money for my business, but I just wanted to be part of it, and I also really wanted to meet Jesse. That was really the key. I wanted to meet him just because we got along too well on social media. And then when we met, what I love is the fact that you did it to me. You literally told me. I remember it was like a February, and you're like, you're going to go, because we had already been interacting and hanging out and talking. And you're like, you're going on Shark Tank in February. And I was like, no, I'm not. And he's like, yeah, you're going. I don't care if I have to get you in a car, but you're going. He's like, I'm going to force you to go. And so you gave me quite a bit of insight on what I needed to do to go do it. Obviously I was not as successful as you in the sense, but I got to experience it. And I did do the whole wristband thing. I absolutely loved the idea of it. Was it something that maybe I would probably come back again? I probably would do it again. I would probably just have to do it a little bit further into the. I just need to get a little bit. I think I need a little bit more in the world of my brand, I guess, is probably what I think of. But my questions kind of go for when it comes to Shark Tank. So for those that don't know, you did get a deal from the Sharks. But what's interesting to me is about the deal is, and I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about how this works, because you've been very good at the whole idea of the pivot and adaptability. Because obviously hummus is dominated by some larger companies.
Oh, yeah.
To get into. And your big thing when you were during the thing was you actually talked about something that was actually a salad dressing. Which had never been done before, because it was actually, and I'll let you kind of talk about it. So when you went in, did you have those ideas already in mind? Like, you had kind of like, what other products can I have besides the hummus? Because my hummuses are different flavors, like, like barbecue and like and black bean and all of this, and like, buffalo style and stuff like that. What when you went in for your approach, because I think that was the clincher, was like, whoa, you have something different? Like, you're coming up with something different? How did that whole process go through when you were dealing with the Sharks on that?
Yeah, so when, there was a lot of overlapping happening at this time. And it's kind of funny because, like, looking back on my road with Odang, I didn't know what CPG stood for, right? Until I walked into basically Publix's office, right?
Yeah.
Which stands for Consumer Packaged Goods, by the way. And that's the space I was in, right? So anything in the grocery store or Target or any of those places sell, it's basically a CPG product. So being naive was like really a blessing, because when I was auditioning for Shark Tank, from January until literally June when we filmed, I was also already in the works of talking to Whole Foods, and I was in the works of talking to Publix. And, I was really big, and there's some discretionary tail to this. I was big at the fake it till you make it at that time, right? Mm-hmm. Because I kept getting turned down, and I noticed quickly, well, we're just a small farmers market brand. So
can I ask a question real quick? When you're talking to these brands, are you at this point producing the hummus still in-house? Like almost like cottage style?
The back of East End.
Okay.
Yeah.
So commissary style.
With a team.
Yes,
we had
with a team. Okay.
A crew of 5 people, which, I thank them every day for that amazing work, because we were a little factory, man. We would go in, we'd pop up at East End, and we'd crank out 500 tubs, 1,000 tubs of hummus. I mean, it was crazy the number of how efficient we were. But yeah, like going to fill, like Whole Foods wasn't that bad. Publix was going to be an issue. And with Publix, I went in, and it was the first real, because like Whole Foods meetings at that time, they're much different now. You would just walk into a Whole Foods store and talk to like the grocery manager. It was very casual. And then right as I was, of course, trying to get into Whole Foods, they were changing the platform. So with Publix, I was like, oh my God, this is like a real meeting, right? So again, I was always trying to make Go Dang look bigger than we were because I didn't want them to be like, well, you're a nobody, you know? So I had this idea because I kept listening to my customers at the farmer's market say, I put your hummus on salad because salad dressing is so high calorie. And I remember back in the day, I used to work at Applebee's and I used to love that Asian chicken salad they have. It's like 1,800 calories. And I'm like, it's literally like coleslaw mix with like basically an Asian coleslaw dressing and chicken. It's all in the salad dressing. And they used to always bother me because I used to love it, but I hated eating it, right? Because it was so bad for you. So I was like, man, if you just thinned out hummus into a dressing format, that would be killer. Little did I know the amount of food science that would go in behind that to actually make that work. But for that Publix meeting, which was in like May, like right before we filmed for Shark Tank, I go in and I pitch my hummus, and behind it, literally, Biggie, the night before, I go to Publix, I buy a competitor's salad dressing, I go home, I dump out all the dressing right down the drain, I peel the labels off, I wash the bottles, I put my watered down hummus in it, okay? I had a graphic designer quickly make up labels. You know, I mean, we literally just mocked up some like fast labels. They looked really legit though, and we glued them to the bottle. And we put some heat shrink wrap on top. They looked like a production product. We took them in and we set them off in the background to show her, oh, we're here pitching the hummus today, but we're a bigger company. So as we're like taste testing the hummus in this meeting, she's like, well, what are those? I'm like, oh, these are future innovations. You know, we're a bigger company than we are, blah, blah, blah. You know, everyone thinks we're small. We're not, you know, whatever. And she's like, oh, I want to try them. And I'm like, oh, see, these needed refrigerated, and we didn't know you wanted to try them. Our bad, because it would have tasted awful, absolutely awful. So we left, and about 3 weeks later, we get a call saying, "Hey, you're in for the hummus." And I was like, "Oh my God, sick!" And then a week later, I get a call saying, "Just kidding. Unfortunately, things came up, i.e., a certain competitor with a red lid said no, you know, wouldn't allow it, basically." But she's like, "Come back in for those hummus dressings. We really like those. I want to try those. Can you send them to me?" And I'm like, "Oh crap." You know, so I kind of like talked smack and then got called on it. And I had about 30 days. So we filmed Shark Tank in June, the beginning of June. When I got back at the end of June, I had another meeting with Publix. So
when you basically were on the show saying, yeah, we actually have Publix that's interested, it was true.
Oh, very, yeah.
It was true. So then
chaos.
So then at what point does this all of a sudden now you go from I'm making this at my house and I'm buying everything. We're doing it in-house, like kind of like in a commissary to, oh crap, I now have to go to like have someone else actually produce it for me. Because you're now going to someone who actually has to create, I'm assuming you have to give them your recipe or whatever and try to find a company that will do it and kind of do mass production of your hummus.
So this is where 99.9% of food startups get stuck, right?
Yep.
It's very easy to make it out of your house. A lot of stuff does fall under Florida commissary or cottage law, right? Mm-hmm. But there's a lot of things that don't. And going to a commissary kitchen is great, but commissary kitchens are still limited to size. The biggest thing is storage. Like we made a refrigerated product. So thank God, I'm just a really resourceful person. I figured out that home brewers use deep chest freezers and convert them to refrigerators with like this device. It's like $100. So I was in a 2-bedroom apartment at the time, had a 1-car garage, and I bought 2 giant deep chest freezers and converted them to refrigerators for like $500 for the pair. And that's how we're able to store it because East End didn't have room to store my hummus. So where do you put 1,000 to 2,000 tubs of hummus? Yeah. You know, it's going to go bad. So, you know, that's the stuff you get hung up on is where am I going to keep it if it's refrigerated? Where do you freeze it if it needs to be frozen? How do you transport it? How do you sell it if it needs to be frozen? You know, the whole 9 yards. So like now, I mean, obviously I can do it with my eyes closed because I'm much further along in the space, but I just see so many brands that get stuck on that. Oh, we're making it out of our commercial kitchen or we're making it out of a commissary. We can't find a co-packer. See, we couldn't find a co-packer either. Like for the hummus, there was no co-packer that would make hummus under basically 5,000 pounds. Yeah. You know, batches, and there was no way, and it went bad in 45 days. So even if we could afford to buy it, which we could, there was no place to sell that much hummus at that time. So it was like the chicken or the egg. Well, I need both. You know what I mean? Like, I need a co-packer to give me a chance to make a smaller run to get me on my feet. And I learned that is the hardest part for a brand to transition from that. And then vice versa, when we made the salad dressings, we had a lot of co-packers tell us no immediately because it was hummus. They're like, too thick. And I'm like, this is like a product you've never seen before. It's not what you think it is. So we had to literally sell ourselves to co-packers.
So then did you guys actually came up with a version of a salad dressing? So it was like you guys came up with it. And then once you did that, then you're like, then you had to basically, because it's brand new, it's new to market.
Never
so there's
existed,
no one knew what the heck it was. So then how do I produce it? So you had to deal with all of that then.
Yeah, I mean, hummus, it's the oil and the vinegar scenario, right? I mean, you're taking a chickpea. Even if you grind it into mush, it's still a particulate, right? It never dissolves, and you're mixing with oils, vinegars, and water. So what happens is no matter how much you grinded it, or would ground it down, it would, it would separate and create like a chickpea puck in the bottom of the salad dressing, and all the other stuff would float to the top. So if you poured it, you got no chickpea, right?
Yeah.
It was a really funky flavor. So over, I mean, we massaged it for like 2 years after that, right? Making sure that it would stay together. We ended up using like aquafaba to help bind it and stuff, like some really cool creative ways to do it. But yeah, I mean, the initial co-packer runs were nightmares, and then on top of that, and I won't deep dive too far into the food science aspect of it, but your recipes can and probably will change as you scale.
I was going to say, because you're now you're not doing like 1,000 tubs per se. You're doing 10,000 tubs.
Yeah.
And it's like now numbers and recipes and everything, all the things, different variations.
Well, and it's funny, right? Because like a pound of cayenne and 250 pounds of cayenne, and they don't scale directly. It's very strange.
Okay.
You would think it'd be like, equal, but it could be spicier. It could be less spicy depending on how big of a batch you're making. And it's wild because all ingredients do that. So even if you have a recipe, your 5,000 gallon recipe is different if you try to scale it back to the original. But you might get the exact same flavor.
Yeah.
Which is so strange, right?
That's insane.
But yeah, it is. And the biggest thing that people don't understand in food science is when you scale a food product, it's not necessarily the flavor profile, but it's how you have to produce it to hit grocery store standards. So like they'll put like on bottled and canned stuff, it can't be less than a year's shelf life. So I could have done a completely different product. I only had a 3-month shelf life, but the grocery store wouldn't buy it. So you then get into that game of how shelf life works. And, then you have to, like, for instance, we had a hot fill, which in essence, you kind of cook the dressing to get it shelf stable, right? Versus if we refrigerated it, we might have used a different product. It's a whole thing.
So at the end, you were able to, after you got like the deal, like forget, like, yes, you got the deal with Shark Tank, but after you got like, how much time by the time that you got back from doing Shark Tank and Publix was waiting for you, did you actually provide them some dressing for them to use? Were you able to do that in the course of like the month, or did it just kind of, how did that process go?
I literally was making, I kid you not, I was making salad dressings in my hotel in Los Angeles for Shark Tank. Like I was R&Ding in the bathroom. Like I had, I went to Target and I bought, a little food processor because I was just trying to figure out how to do this.
Yeah.
And when I got home, I worked I'm not even joking, 15 hours a day, nonstop. Because I just had quit my full-time job, like maybe 4 or 5 months earlier than that. Well, no, probably a year before that. So, I mean, it was full-time, my thing, right? To try to figure these dressings out. And I delivered her an incredible dressing for the day we pitched them, to which she said yes. And the delivery date was in October. And coincidentally, like the worst storm ever happened, and Shark Tank called me and said I was airing the exact same weekend Publix wanted me to deliver. So, we had found a co-packer in that time. We got him up and running. The launch could not have gone worse. Like, could not have gone worse than we tried. Like, everything hit at the exact same time, and none of us were ready for it or the magnitude, and it was a nightmare. It should have flatlined us, but we pulled through somehow.
That's, but I think it also kind of shows the resourcefulness and being able to figure out different ways. But I think what's impressive is the pivoting aspect that you went with going from the fact of like, okay, well, I am hummus. I started with hummus, and I'm still hummus, but now I'm a new look of hummus to be able to do. And the hummus dressings are delicious. I know you also, not only did you get into Publix, but you also got into Walmart. I mean, there's a reason why you guys were in 10,000 locations and whatever in 50 different states. So it's pretty impressive when it comes to that.
The craziest story on the pivot was we launched the salad dressings out of basically accident. Like, we knew there was interest in them, but like when we first launched them, they didn't do that great. And that's because the original formula was very low calorie because we thought that's what people wanted. But we could have been 100 calories and still crushing the competition. Like, I learned so much in that time frame of like sometimes you can go too far. We were 20 calories. It did not need to be 20 calories. And we learned that quickly because you got so much better of a product for 50 calories. And in 50 calories, we didn't realize we didn't have to try that hard to hit 50 calories. And when that dawned on me was working with Walmart. I got invited out to Walmart for this huge event they do every year. And they hand select the people that go out there. We go out there. We end up becoming the number one product at the whole thing, which is insane. Our dips were like super exciting. People loved them. And Walmart said yes to the dips. About a month later, they said no. And I was like, okay, we're getting bullied by.
And what I think is funny, the way you named it. And that's what, because like, you named it dips because it was like almost like it changes the characteristic. I think when we were talking about it, you had mentioned like if we maybe name it something else because it's and then because they're different flavors, then it's not technically, it's still hummus, but it's a dip.
It's more versatile.
Yeah, it's more versatile. It gives you more options to do things. So that I always thought that was very interesting when you brought that up to me because I was like dips. I was like, and then I was like, oh, I'm like, now you're not in the same market. You're not in the same field. So therefore I shouldn't be in that issue.
Well, we tried hard to figure out how to shake.
Yeah.
I mean, because when you start getting into grocery, those big guys don't want to lose their shelf space.
Correct.
I mean, they pay millions of dollars every year for that shelf space. So like, the red brand's owned by Pepsi. Mm-hmm. So you're not upsetting Sabra, you're upsetting Pepsi. I mean, it's one of the 5 biggest food companies in the world, right? So when we finally got turned down by, it was weird. We kept getting yeses and then kept getting nos. And I was like, I know what's happening here. So then we were going to food trade shows and the Sabra team was coming over, looking at our innovation and just, asking questions to my team, to me, trying to shake us down. It was literally their food scientists. So I kind of got the idea. I'm like, we were reformed. So Walmart, when they said no, I was completely defeated. I was so upset because I'm like, how do we go from the number one product that day to no? Like, it makes no sense. A week later, the salad dressing buyer reached out because she had seen the dressings. And I just had kind of tweaked them again. And they were really nice. And she was like, I need these. Come back in. So literally, I flew right back out, had another meeting with her. And she was like, I brought 3. She goes, I need more flavors. She goes, I like these. I want to bring them in. Give me more flavors. I went home. I literally locked myself in my house for 4 days. Actually, it was funny. There was doing construction next door at the apartment next door. So I drove out to my grandma's house in Daytona, locked myself in her house for 4 days. My poor grandparents are saints. And I just let these food processes rip. I mean, I worked around the clock. Monday morning, I sent her out 12 or 14 bottles of dressing, different flavors. I overnighted them. Tuesday morning, I get a phone call. She goes, you need to be on a plane here tomorrow. So I get out there. I'm like, I just got back. My God, And she's like, I've just never had a brand turn around anything this fast. And these are all like stellar. So we had like a war meeting with Walmart where we had to figure out the 7 dressings she was going to bring in. I thought we were going to get 3. And then it was like, oh crap, now we have to deliver on
I was
this.
going to say, now, like, okay, yeah, I can make these, but I got to mass produce now.
Well, and what was interesting is we were kind of had that on its way, but that's where the massive pivot in our brand came from because the way that whole meeting went was unlike anything I'd ever seen before. And this is the largest retailer on earth. So I flew back and the whole flight home, I'm like, this is it. Like, this is lightning, quote unquote, in a bottle, right? What's in a bottle. And I was like, we're no longer doing hummus. And I like hit me like, just a 1,000-pound brick. And I was like, we're no longer a hummus company. I was like, Sabra and Pepsi are trying to sabotage us. And at the time, it was just getting worse. And I saw it coming. So what people don't understand is in the food space, you'll see some kind of crazy deals sometimes. at like Publix and you're like, oh man, what a killer deal. Like 3 for $5. That's not because they're nice. That's because there's a motive behind that. So like Publix or Sabra was getting so gritty trying to put everyone else out of business. A lot of us newer startups, they were doing buy one, get 3 free tubs of hummus in some markets. We can't keep up with that.
No.
And that's when I found out, doing a bunch of research and back end stuff, Sabra's monthly marketing budget was $55 million. Ours was $500,000 for the year.
Wow.
There was no way we could keep up with it.
Yeah.
So I went back and I told my investors and my partners and stuff how the meeting went, stellar, great. And I said, guys, we should stop doing hummus. And they basically all like looked at me and said, get out, like we're done here, And I was like, no, I'm dead serious. I want to kill hummus. We're going to be an everything but hummus company. I was like, I'm looking at I call it my blue ocean strategy. I found a bunch of white space in the grocery store. The salad dressing aisle is dormant. I just had the Publix buyer lock me in her office, or Walmart buyer lock me in her office and tell me, you're not leaving until we fix this. Never had that happen. And I said, I got more stuff we can go after, and let's make Sabra buy us. That would be the goal. That's the sweetest revenge ever,
Yeah.
So, and I said, what we're going to do, though, is we're not going to tell the world we stopped making hummus. And they're like, no, get out. So I left that meeting kind of upset because I'm like, how do you not see this? I told my VP of sales, I was like, listen, you and I are going to do this covert. We're not going to tell anybody, but I don't want you to mention the word hummus. Don't take a hummus meeting. Don't sell hummus, nothing for the next 60 days. Only salad dressings. And it would be, we'd make a phone call. We'd get we'll take a meeting on the hummus. We'd have the meeting. We'd fly out there. We'd get a maybe. They kind of yoink us around. The salad dressing, we'd call. We'd pitch. We'd go fly out. We land deal. Call, pitch, land deal. Call, pitch, land deal. And in the 10 rejections or kind of wonky, yes, no's we'd get for hummus, I thought we land 3 of the 10 for the dressings. We landed all 10.
Yeah.
And I was like, holy crap, right? So my investors are seeing these numbers coming, and they're like, we need to have a meeting. What is happening? And I was like, oh my God. I'm like, that's strange, right? And they're like, yeah. And I was like,
everyone just likes the salad dressing.
Yeah. I was like, well, I got a confession to make. I'm like, remember when I said we're going to stop selling hummus? And they go, yeah. I'm like, well, we did. And they were like, oh, what? And I was like, but we just got 12 brand new accounts, worth hundreds of thousands of dollars each, right?
Yeah.
And they're like, we see it now. So for the next almost 2 years, we told the world, we would go on social media and we'd advertise hummus.
Yeah.
And my favorite part of this whole thing was we would go to the trade shows then because we knew that, they were watching us, all the other competition. We were making these extremely fake hummus products and showcasing them at these massive trade shows. We had a 0-calorie hummus. That's scientifically impossible, right? We had a 0-carb hummus. Again, scientifically impossible. And the R&D teams would come over and they would be like, I'll just never forget the lead scientist of Sabra was just baffled. She goes, there's no way. And I'm like, no, we have, ingredients from the rainforest. We were just making up stuff left and right. But we packaged it. It looked real. But Biggie, when it had so much sugar and chocolate and all that, it was delicious. And we're like, 0 calories. She's like, that's impossible. And she'd get I'll never forget how mad she got. And she was taking photos of it. And finally we had to go get security to ask her to leave, right? And we were doing it because we knew it would throw them off.
Yeah, because you didn't want, obviously, if they knew what you were doing, then they would be like, oh, well, we're going to get into that game too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the buyers would come by and they'd be like, 0-calorie hummus. Like, don't worry about that. Look at these salad dressings. And we did that for a year and a half. And what it did is by the time Sabra caught on to what we were doing, we had already landed in about 10,000 grocery stores. Literally 15 months. They didn't see it coming. To which the next point was the next year trade show, she came over and was just like, she goes, that is the bamboozlement. Oh, she goes, our whole company, half of Pepsi knows who you guys are. And I was like, you know what? I'm proud of myself for that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Very, very cool. So then without going into too much, obviously your things, so you were, that's kind of amazing success. But I also know that now Odang, you kind of, even though it was your baby, you've kind of now it's you're there, but not there. So I was kind of curious a little bit about how difficult of a process is that when it's something that you kind of you created and nurtured, and it's kind of gotten to a point and you're kind of like, hey, I'm ready to take the next step with it. How difficult was that for you to be able to do?
Well, we had a couple acquisition kind of conversations come up in like the summer of 2019. One of them was really serious, and there was potential I was going to go with the company and have to move and stuff. And it was kind of scary and exciting because at least I was still part of it. But it was an acquisition. So like another big brand was going to buy us. So like, that's when I really kind of had to start swallowing the hard pill of like, oh my God, this is where it's going to go. And I had no idea what I was doing when I started building this company. I didn't know how CPG works. I didn't know how building big companies potentially worked. There's kind of a lifestyle like avenue you could take where you build them nice and slow and they're yours forever. And then going on Shark Tank without realizing it. I mean, Shark Tank is venture capital.
Yeah.
So I kind of accidentally opened the door to venture capital without realizing what venture capital truly was. And their whole thing is get in and get out. Build it, blow it up. Everybody makes some money and we do it again and again and again. So I kind of went down that path and it became such a monster. There was no way to then take it to I didn't have the capital to take it out of that situation on my own. So I was like, all right, I kind of had to swallow that pill. Like, oh, this is the path I accidentally took on it. But I was okay with it at the time.
Yeah.
And then we were kind of talking about acquisitions and stuff like that. And then my partners and I, my investors originally, we were not seeing eye to eye on a lot of things about how the company should go forward.
Yeah.
And it came down to I wasn't having fun under those circumstances. It was a lot of stress and scrutiny from relationship-wise of my couple of investors. I knew I was young. I knew I had fun. I knew I was learning a ton of stuff.
Yeah.
And I knew Odang was in a place where I could have stayed and I could have kept it going. And, they basically gave me an ultimatum, which was stay and do as they say or don't. And I was like, okay, well, I didn't create this life to kind of fit in a box, if you will.
Got it.
So that's kind of the route I took. And I left in, basically January 2020, and was like, you know what, this is where I'm at. It was heartbreaking because it was not the ending I wanted for myself and Odang. I don't really know, even if I sold it for, myself, I had a chance to actually sell it and work that next year or two. Watching it still incorporate under a different brand would still have been just as hard.
Yeah.
Because they're going to get in there. They're going to change a bunch of stuff.
Oh, yeah.
It's just what they do. So, I mean, it was grieving. I mean, there was a lot of crying. There was a lot of like, what do I do now? Who am I?
Yeah.
And COVID hit. I was going to take some time off because I really, especially the last couple of years before COVID, I mean, I gave myself to that mission.
Yeah.
Missed a lot of stuff in my life, which I don't recommend to anyone. But I did it, and I was like, all right, well, I'm going to spend time with family and stuff and travel a little bit, take a little break. We all got locked down, and you couldn't do anything.
Yeah.
So, that's when I kind of really had some chance to quietly self-reflect. Who am I? What do I want to do? Where do I want to go? What next? The Odang chapter is kind of closing. I'm still an investor in Odang today. Hopefully, good things happen to that company and it goes on to someone else that we originally planned. But I actually went and helped another food startup kind of launch their product and spent the last 15 months doing that. And, I realized, this is what I love doing. I love the building, I love the challenges. I love the problems. This is what makes me happy. So it all worked out like awesome, like really awesome.
Yeah. I mean, and like what you said, it's kind of like, it just kind of works its purpose. When we were chatting before, I was kind of curious about the aspect because, having to do with the idea of passion, when you start something with like a passion and a projects and things like that, I kind of wanted to get a little bit about your thoughts on that, just because, obviously like I'm seeing it. I see from talking to different guests, one of the things I notice is that, sometimes when you're too passionate about something, or if it's too much your baby, you're too close to it, and therefore you're not willing to pivot and kind of grow from it.
Yep.
So I kind of wanted to get a little bit of an idea, because now you're kind of working in the space where you're you're kind of helping other businesses using your creativity, using that kind of thought process. But at the same time, you're kind of like, after you help or do your thing or consulting, you just walk off to the next thing. So can you tell me a little bit about that aspect of it? Like how difficult is it sometimes to be able to grow a business or to be able to sometimes make those decisions when you're so passionate or so involved into it?
Yeah, you can be blinded by your passions, right? We were talking about this before. I am passionate about food.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't necessarily like, I woke up and thought about hummus.
Yeah.
Like I'm Polish and Native American. I didn't know what hummus was in Nordic. I didn't know what, hummus was till I was like 17 when I worked at a restaurant, right?
Yeah.
So like, it wasn't like I grew up with these like family recipes. My family didn't even know what hummus was until I was on Shark Tank. Literally when I was on Shark Tank, they were like, oh, so wait, this is a serious thing, huh? I was like, yeah, because they thought I was, a hippie for doing the farmers markets,
Yeah.
But then they started seeing my vision for what I was trying to do. Passion is, you should be passionate about drive and motivation. You should be passionate about becoming something. You should be passionate about being happy.
Mm-hmm.
I no longer think you should be passionate necessarily about your startup. Like it doesn't sound right. You don't need to be passionate about your startup. That's what I want to say. Because if you're happy and it makes you happy and it's something you love to do, great. Doesn't mean you eat, breathe, and sleep that thing. Because
Correct.
At this point in time, I've seen a lot of people with super successful products and super successful brands, and they love what they do, but their passions are all these other things. Helping people, giving back, whatever, skiing. I mean, whatever your passion is, right?
Yeah.
Your family. Passion is a strong word, but they are super happy about being, Clio Bar or Perfect Bar or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
Your passion can sometimes get you in trouble because when you go all in, you're almost skeptical to let anybody help you. You feel like someone's going to take it from you.
Yeah.
When really, which then shuts you down from being able to get help that you need or, taking that next step that's so scary. So it's like the other thing too are people I've seen this 100 times. Oh, well, I have an idea for a business, but I'm just not passionate about it. Well, do you like it? Like one guy was cybersecurity. Yeah, I think it's cool. Cybersecurity is awesome. I'm not passionate about it, but would you do it every day? Oh, yeah, I love it. Okay, well then do cybersecurity. Like, dude, you know what I mean? Like a lot of us go to work and we're like, oh, I love my job, but I'm not going to give you my entire life, 24 hours a day for that. You know what I mean? You're passionate about your family. You're passionate about your loved ones. Like I said, hobbies, whatever. Mm-hmm. Some people are lucky and create passions into businesses. But what I think is kind of scary, like I'm very passionate about cars. Love cars. I don't know if I'd want to be a mechanic because I'm spending 14 hours a day working on other people's cars. On the weekends, am I going to really want to work on my own cars?
Correct.
So it's kind of a balance of that. And I think my perspective has shifted. You should do stuff you like doing, no doubt. But don't always think it has to be passion. Because if you enjoy doing it, well, that's good enough. Yeah. If you can go to work every day and talk about it and you're happy about it, good enough. You know what I mean? Because it's just funny. I've seen a lot of people not start businesses because they're like, yeah, but it's not my passion. But do you hate it? Oh, I don't hate it. I love it. Okay, well, that works.
That's good enough.
Yeah,
that's good
try
enough.
that. Yeah,
started.
Yeah. So I think people sometimes think like, well, I should only start a business if it's a hobby or something I do every day. We wouldn't have. I mean, who's passionate about the healthcare system?
Yeah.
Who's passionate about COVID? Thank God people like doing it.
Yeah.
So we had COVID testing centers and stuff.
I think a lot of it also is the fact that sometimes you can just you can think of a problem and be like, oh, there's a solution to it, and then I want to be able to help it, and maybe that's kind of how it goes. It doesn't have to be. Like you said, no one ever wants to do like, hey, I want to do COVID tests or I want to do, I don't know, a dog scooping business.
Yeah.
But there's a solution and there's a business and there's a thing and you came up with it and you go with it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the amazing aspect of it. I mean, that's why I tell my wife all the time, I'm like, I never laugh. I'm always amazed by all the different small businesses when I do markets or indie markets, because there's someone for everyone. When it comes to like your niche of whatever it is, even though you may look at it and go, who the hell would buy this?
Yeah.
But guess what? There's people buying it. I mean, you just got to find the right person that likes it and that is into it, and that's kind of how it goes. So I totally get that.
Well, you know, it's funny. There's these two girls I follow. They own a brand called Stony Clover, huge, successful brand, online, direct to consumer. It's like bags and purses. And my girlfriend, she loves them. They break so many of the business rules, and I just love it, you know, because like that's kind of where I'm at with like the passion story. It's like, but if you like doing it, do it.
Yeah.
You know, like if you think it's going to solve, like me, I'm passionate about entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
I love, that's my passion. Starting, I mean, I don't want to corner myself into I'm just passionate about food brands. I want to do it all. So these girls, you know, they're like, well, you know, they did a podcast and they're like, well, we don't do market research. They go, we don't pay for that stuff. Like we don't watch trends. We just make stuff we like because we know there are other girls out there like us.
Yeah.
And I like rocked me because I'm like, I get paralysis by analysis sometimes with, or analysis, whatever the way it goes.
Yeah.
Sometimes with launching new stuff because I'm like, oh my God, are people going to want this? And I just recently, I'm kind of doinking with a new project and I'm like, you know what? I want it. I think it's bomb. There's other people like me. I'm like, so full send, let's go.
Yeah.
And it's just funny because everything they launch crushes because they don't settle and they make it exactly how they would want to buy it.
Yeah.
And I love that because sometimes people just get so hung up on I don't know if it's going to work. Would you pull money out and buy it for someone else? Oh yeah. Done.
Do it.
You know what I mean? Like
do it.
Do it.
Yep. No, I get it. A few things. One, I know that you did. I know you did some mentorship and you like speak at UCF, like their Launchpad, entrepreneurial Launchpad. I was kind of curious. What are some, when you see all these different people running businesses and stuff like that? Do you see any common issues that you've seen people trying to start their own business that you kind of like a common thing that you've noticed or see as someone's doing it?
So yeah, I go Knights. You know, huge,
Charge on.
Yeah, charge on, right? We're both huge alumni. Yeah. I owe so much to that school, so, you know, for all the help they gave me.
Yeah.
So I love to give back. I go up once a month and coach at the Launchpad up there for the whole day. And whether it's the Launchpad or high school kids I talk to or even adults at, you know, seminars, whatever I, you know, end up speaking at or talking to, the two things I see constantly that I just try to shake the hell out of people. One, it's never going to be perfect. If it's perfect, you've launched too late.
Yep.
Right? So I've just seen so many people where they're like, oh my God, it's not ready yet. Or, you know, oh, I need this to happen. Or I need this late. I see label and packaging constantly. Oh, I don't have the packaging right. Do you even, or they'll try to trademark or patent a name or a product or whatever. And I'm like, do you even know if people want this product? Have you had, you know, it's called traction. Do you have any sort of traction to prove that?
Yeah.
Well, no. So, and I've seen this. One person was going to mortgage their family's home. Okay, the mom and dad was going to mortgage their home for this kid to try to put a patent on the product. And I'm like, this is a very easy thing to quickly test. And by you testing quickly enough, you'll be able to see the response and still file a patent to protect yourself. Like, you know, there's a way to do it. And you spent almost no money versus mortgaging your parents' home, which is how businesses get upside down immediately into bad spots. So I see that constantly where it's like, dude, just get out and see if you could test it. And there's a million ways nowadays, especially with social media, to hack together something to test a response. Whether it's clicks to your website, whether it's signing up for an email list, saying, oh, alert me when that comes soon. You can now make a prototype of a product, get on TikTok, talk about this and saying this launches in 4 weeks. Email, sign up on the website. You'll instantly see how serious people are about buying it. And it costs you only the money it is to make the prototype. And then all you do is you go, hey guys, thanks for signing up my email list. We're having some delays. It's going to take another 2 months. You know, that's number one. And number two is it's the second half of that. Why I need $100,000 to launch this product. No, you don't. How big's your market size? What do you mean? That's my point exactly. You need to be on Google. You need to be doing research. Who are your competitors? Well, I don't have any competitors. I pull up my phone, I find 3 competitors within 15 minutes, right? So it's like you have to know your business before you build your business. Who's in your market? Who's and my favorite thing is, oh, this has never been done before. I find 3 customers doing it already.
Yep.
Which is not a bad thing.
Yeah.
Competition's great. It means people are buying it. Is your product better?
Yeah.
So those are the 2 things I see constantly. One, they're so afraid to just start selling or doing, and give me any business on earth and I could figure out a way to get it in a beta test form within a couple weeks. I don't care what you're building. I don't care if it's an electric car. It doesn't matter. You can prove your concept to see if there's any kind of interest. And then number 2 is you don't need capital. People that are giving capital are usually the ones that fail out the fastest because their back's not against the wall. They're too loose and they try to buy their way out of problems. And usually that's not the solution. You got to get creative and you got to figure out, okay, what on the back end is really tripping us up here. So those are the 2 things I see constantly. And it's like almost what I open up with when I coach,
Yeah.
I watch what they say, then I immediately go, yep, it's one of the 2 or usually both, so.
Okay. Top 5 things you think every startup business should have.
Number 1, which is so funny, right? Okay. So number 1 is you, the entrepreneur. You have to be in it. Like, whenever I look at an investment, whenever I look at a new brand coming up, the first thing I look at is the jockey, not the racehorse. Racehorse being the product, jockey being the entrepreneur. You could have the fastest racehorse in history. If you don't have a jockey that can hang on, you got nothing. You got nothing, right? So I always, and I learned this when I was early on too, because it's weird. I got a lot of yeses when I was like, I don't understand why these people are supporting me. It was because apparently I was a good jockey, right? So that's the number 1 thing I look for nowadays, and it's very prevalent, very easy to see a good jockey versus one that needs some help to learn, or one that's just probably, unfortunately, not cut out for racing horses, right? i.e. entrepreneurship. You have to be a self-starter. You have to. No one's going to hold your hand, right? No one's going to pick you up when you fall. But if you need someone to hold your hand or pick you up when you're going to fall, a good jockey will figure out a way how to surround themselves with mentors and advisors and etc. to keep that support system there. And you got to be a firefighter. You got to be willing to know that. Like, my favorite part about my career is every day is a problem. I embrace it. It's a challenge. It's like a puzzle every day, and I love putting puzzles together. The second thing is you got to have a good idea, right? And I'm not talking Facebook. I'm talking a business that has traction. It could be pooping or scooping dog poop. It could be the next Facebook. It could be the next TikTok, whatever. It could be anything in between. There's no magnitude of like, oh, that's a 10 out of 10 a good idea. If it's going to make money and create a business, like, that's a good idea. Do you like doing it? It's a good idea. Is it solving a problem? It's a good idea. 3, 4, and 5. 3 is probably storytelling. You got to have good storytelling. And one of my favorite brands right now is Liquid Death. They're one of the fastest growing CPG brands in the world right now. They just have canned water.
Yeah.
It's just water. They don't even make anything.
No.
But they tell a badass story. Gideon. He makes a chocolate chip cookie. Is it a good chocolate chip cookie? Yes, it's great. How many great chocolate chip cookies exist in this country? I've traveled all over this country at this point. I've had a lot of great cookies. Gideon is a phenomenal storyteller.
Yep.
Number 4, branding. Let's use Gideon. With Gideon's phenomenal storytelling, he has some really, and I'm not saying great, I'm not saying you have to have great branding. You have to have creative branding. I've seen brands have nothing on their labels and kill it. If it matches the storytelling, it's phenomenal, right? So don't get hung up on your brand, because sometimes less is more. Sometimes rickety is better. It's just how the storytelling goes.
And be consistent about it.
Number 5 is consistency. Bingo.
Yeah.
If you're going to do a startup, and I don't care if you're going to start a podcast, I don't care if you're going to become a social media influencer. If I could have one word tattooed on me, it's consistency. That I don't care what you want to do in life. You want to lose weight? Consistency. You want to, become vegetarian, vegan? Consistency. It's showing up every day. It's working on it every single day. It's going to be hard, and you're going to still show up to work. It's going to be fun. You're still going to show up to work. Consistency. It will pull you through messes and hard times more than you'll ever realize. Just still showing up and working.
Yep.
And it might not seem like it's going to go well, but like when Odang and some of my other ventures that I've been part of now have hit really rough patches, that you want to get scared and you want to quit. You want to get scared and you want to go hide. And you can't, because it's your show. So you show up and you're scared and you want to cry, and you probably do cry. I have cried in the middle of work for hours and days, but I showed up, and the problems always work themselves out. If you keep at it, the solution will present itself. So yeah, number 5, and really, I would venture to say 1 and 5 are probably interchangeable. The whole list could kind of rock back and forth, but consistency is everything.
Yeah. I love it, dude. I love it. Where can people follow you? I definitely recommend following him on TikTok. He's it's amazing. We if we had more time, I would definitely bring up that topic of how you've kind of hit. I specifically like the outfits of the day.
Thanks,
when you
man.
do those, I appreciate those as a big guy. So I definitely appreciate that. But where can people follow you and reach out to you? Obviously, I know you get a lot of DMs and a lot of people asking you to kind of get tips and tricks and all that goodness. But just to follow, just to kind of see where you're going and what you're up to next.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy because, we talked earlier about Odang being my almost identity. And over the last, 18 months since I left Odang, around almost 2 years, I guess now, I'm a part of so many things. It's crazy, So really now it's just, real Jesse Wolfe on Instagram, real Jesse Wolfe on TikTok. Shoot me a message. I love messages, especially about business. I love to help people as much as I can. There's actually a couple Facebook groups, just food entrepreneur Facebook groups. I even get in there. It's easier to kind of do group things, and I'll pop on, once every couple of weeks just to answer questions for newer food brands. Yeah. So anything entrepreneurship related, just shoot me a DM and either, just say entrepreneurship or business startup or, lunch with Biggie, and I'll tend to pull those out, and answer them first. So love to help, any way I can. And, people helped me along my way and took the time. So I do it as much as I possibly can now.
Yeah. No, I get it. You probably get quite a bit of it as well, though.
Yeah.
And time is money sometimes. So I totally understand that as well. It's there's only so much sometimes you gotta.
There's only so many hours in a day, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
I'm starting to learn that as well, because people are starting to come to me, and sometimes, my wife will ask me, she's like, "Well, you just like spent all this time with them." I'm like, "What?" And I was like, "Yeah." I'm like, "I'm trying to help them." I'm like,
but then you end up hurting yourself sometimes.
Correct. Yeah.
And I'm with you. I learned that the hard way because we're both really nice guys, and I love people and I love helping people. But yeah, I mean, sometimes I had to learn the hard way to, holy hell, okay, hold on. So that's why I purposely just set aside days or set aside time. And if you can make that window, great. And if you can't, I just had to unfortunately draw boundaries, because otherwise, I mean, I didn't get anything done for my own stuff. Yeah. So
totally get that.
Pretty wild.
Totally get that. Well, Jesse, thank you so much, man. I appreciate our friendship. I appreciate all the information that you've always kind of provided me. You've always been there to listen, and I always appreciate that. So I definitely thank you so much. I've been wanting to have you on for a while. Our schedules just never kind of work together. So I'm so glad we got a chance to do this today. That's our show for today. Thank you so much for Jesse for being on, having lunch with me. Definitely make sure to go check him out. Real Jesse Wolfe. You'll see it all on the social and everything when I tag him on everything. So you'll be able to see him from there. If you enjoyed the show, definitely make sure to subscribe. I definitely appreciate it if you left me a review. You can put some stars. You can leave a review on the show, what you thought of it. The more people that see it, the better, obviously, the more eyes will get to it. So I do appreciate that. If you want to support me, you can check out my brand, Deli Fresh Threads. Do some shopping. Tell your friends. Spread it like PB&J. Thank you. Until next time, keep eating sandwiches and follow your passion. Thanks, everyone.